Oda just dropped a chapter that foreshadows the entire rest of the Elbaf arc. The Elbaf arc has been progressing pretty hastily as Oda keeps dropping chapters for this arc, but this chapter in particular, chapter 1140, set us up for what is supposed to be the main plot of Elbaf, and hinted at a ton of things that are going to happen in the future of this arc. So let's go over them one by one. But first, if you want to stay updated with everything Oda is showing us in the One Piece chapters that drop every week, and also just keep up with the Elbaf arc as we kind of trudge forward towards the end of One Piece, which is kind of crazy to say, why not leave a like and subscribe? Hop on the train. We talk about One Piece every week and we have a good time. The first thing I want to talk about is Gabon's ability to dodge Luffy attempting to take the key. We all expected Gabon to put up a pretty strong display of powers considering he is the old Pirate King's left-hand man, and eventually Luffy and Co are going to have to find out who he is, so obviously we'd see him display a little bit of strength here. But I've seen a lot of people discuss online that there could be more to this encounter. We know there is a secret form of observation haki, teased in One Piece film Red that Shanks and Mihawk have access to, about being able to cancel your opponent's observation haki. Now I'm not saying this is what Gabon did, but if there was an arc that was going to introduce a new type of haki, I'd imagine it'd be Elbaf, and Gabon does a very good job at keeping this key away from Luffy, despite Luffy himself being a user of Future Sight. It's also possible that the person that introduces this type of haki to us in this arc is just Shanks because Elbaf is supposed to be Shanks' arc, but I think it was worth mentioning that maybe it could be Gabon based off of this chapter. The next is this panel of the castle crumbling all the way down to the undead realm of Elbaf after Gabon used his attack and pretty much chopped the whole building up. I've seen a bunch of mixed signals on this panel, a lot of people saying Oda just wanted to display Gabon's power, but also a lot of people saying why would Oda have such a large panel of just the castle crumbling to the undead world? I think it's possible that this attack could have some consequences in the future of the arc. Perhaps this is exactly where Loki was chained up, and the falling debris literally cut his chains and Loki is now free without needing the key. Regardless, I think it's a little weird for Oda to have such a large panel take up so much space and only show debris from the battle above. I think this will have some sort of consequence when Luffy goes back down to the undead realm to free Loki. But the biggest indicator of what we are to expect with the future of Elbaf comes with the panel right after this one. If Elbaf is still safe by the time you decide to leave, come find me. These are some pretty hefty words that indicate at the end of the arc something special is going to happen, and there's a few different options as to what it could mean. The most glaring option is the last poneglyph. I think a lot of One Piece fans believe Elbaf will be the last arc where the Straw Hats don't have a poneglyph. A lot of people think they'll come into possession of the fourth poneglyph in this arc. So it's possible that Gabon is holding on to this fourth poneglyph and wants to make sure the Straw Hats are strong enough to fulfill the legacy Roger is waiting for, so he's waiting to see their performance at the catastrophe that is about to hit Elbaf with the God's Knights. Now, whether or not what Rayleigh wants to give the Straw Hats is the last poneglyph, or if he just wants to reveal who he is at this point in time, what's important from this panel is that Gabon knows something is going on. He wouldn't include saying, if Elbaf is still safe, if he didn't expect a giant catastrophe to happen while the Straw Hats were here. We also know that Gabon felt the surge of haki when the God's Knights arrived on the island, so it's very possible he's leaving it up to the Straw Hats to save the island to see what they're capable of, and is fully aware that there's a war about to happen. This is further reinforced by the next direct panel where we see Shanks. Shanks is having a conversation with Gabon where Gabon says, "Honestly, Shanks, you really think I'd trust him that easily?" And Shanks responds, "Fair enough, do as you please, Gabon." Now this is definitely in reference to Gabon wanting to fight Luffy before he gives the key to Loki, but there's a bigger part of this that we're missing. If Shanks and Gabon were discussing how to deal with Luffy's arrival at Elbaf in the first place, that means both of them are expecting some sort of disaster here. What I mean by that is, how did Shanks and Gabon know to discuss the key that frees Loki before Luffy even got to the island? The key to freeing Loki only became an important plot point after Loki asked Luffy to free him. But here we see that before Luffy even met Loki, Gabon and Shanks are talking about this exact key, and that Gabon wants Luffy to prove himself before he gets that key. Now this could have been either Shanks knowing that Luffy's curious nature would lead to Loki being freed, or Shanks knowing that Loki would tempt Luffy, who's a little dumb sometimes, to try and free him, and he prepared Gabon for this potential catastrophe. Regardless, the most important takeaway from this conversation is that Shanks is asking Gabon to trust in Luffy. So Shanks, before Luffy even got to Elbaf, knew that Luffy would be coming, knew that Luffy would meet Gabon, and for some reason asked Gabon to show him hospitality. Whether this is for the whole key scenario we just discussed, or maybe even if he's asking Gabon to trust Luffy with the matter of the God's Knights in order to test Luffy's strength before Luffy goes to see Shanks again, is unclear to us, but this panel makes it very certain that Shanks knew Luffy was coming and has something planned for his arrival. And Gabon is in on whatever it is. Next up, we have something that I didn't really catch on my first read-through, but on my second read-through, I thought there might be something here. And that is with the kids at the school spotting the bird that contains the God's Knights, but the teacher does not spot them. Now, you're probably confused at why I would even mention this, but let me explain. Something I'm a little confused about is why the God's Knights are at Elbaf in the first place. Originally, I thought they'd be included in this arc, but only because these Straw Hats are here, and the Straw Hats just escaped the Gorosei, so obviously the Gorosei would send the God's Knights after them. But for all we know and have been shown so far, the God's Knights don't even know that a Yonko is on the island with them. So is it just a coincidence that they're on Elbaf trying to steal these children and bring them back to Marijoa? If that were the case, it would be a crazy coincidence that the government just decided on a whim to go steal some giants for their battle force when Luffy happens to be on the island. But what would make a little more sense is that if these children were a little bit special, now it might be the only time for the world government to kidnap them before they grow and become strong. And how could these kids possibly be special? Well, they're spotting this bird that contains the God's Knights, and the teacher is not. We saw a few chapters back that the God's Knights are concealing their presence in order to hide as they fly through the skies of Elbaf, and I think that's why this teacher is not able to sense them flying. But the kids are all able to spot this bird. So I know it might be a stretch, but perhaps the world government is trying to grab these Elbaf kids because they have some sort of innate power to sense people regardless of their presence, and they would be a huge asset for the world government in the final war. So much so that the God's Knights choose to summon 2 more of their number in order to complete the task. Another thing that I haven't seen many people catch is the Abyss summoning circles, which we learn the name of this chapter and how they work. We learn that these summoning circles, which we also saw in Egghead Island work for the Gorosei, are called the Abyss, or just Abyss. Now, something that's very interesting about these summoning circles is that they're exactly that, summoning circles, which means someone uses them to summon someone else. In Egghead Island, it was Saturn who summoned the rest of the Gorosei after he sailed to the island with Kizaru. And now in Elbaf, the God's Knights have summoned more God's Knights members. But that begs the question, who summoned Shamrock and Gunko? Both Shamrock and Gunko were summoned through Harold's throne room with what seems like nobody present. And this doesn't make sense considering every other use of the Abyss summoning circles needs someone to activate them and summon the person being summoned. Now, this could mean that someone amongst the giants is secretly working for the world government or is part of the God's Knights, but I actually think it is King Harold who we need to be keeping an eye on, even though he's dead. And there's 2 reasons for my claim here. One being that the summoning circle, obviously, is in King Harold's own throne room, the room that he would be spending the most time in. But also, when the other God's Knights members are summoned, and they ask Shamrock and Gunko why they're on Elbaf in the first place, they ask if they were visiting Harold's grave. People who are part of the God's Knights and are celestial dragons in the first place do not care about people below them living on the surface. There is no reason why God's Knights members should care about the death of King Harold or his person at all. So the fact that this was even mentioned, and the possibility of these 2 God's Knights members visiting Harold's grave is even on the table, means that potentially Harold was working for the world government and could have been a member of the God's Knights. This also would provide a heap of evidence for Loki not actually being a bad guy, and when he killed his father to steal the legendary devil fruit, it was to prevent it from falling in the hands of the world government, which King Harold was working for. If you want more evidence as to why Loki isn't actually a bad guy and may end up fighting with the Straw Hats, check out this video. And the last thing that this chapter is hinting at is some sort of game that Shamrock wants to set up in capturing these children. And if you paid attention in Egghead Island, this moment very clearly mirrors a glimpse we got of the God Valley flashback. Just like his son, Figureland Garling, at the God Valley flashback we got in Egghead, was competing in a game to round up slaves and pretty much kidnap or kill them. Like father, like son, Shamrock is trying to make a game out of kidnapping these giants, similar to the game that was held on God Valley. I think this is probably the event or catastrophe that Shanks and Gabon were prepared for, and it's gonna end up leading into the first conflict on the Elbaf arc, where these Straw Hats are going to meet with the God's Knights for the first time in trying to protect the children of Elbaf. Whether or not this will be the primary conflict of Elbaf is yet to be seen, but it's very clear that Oda is telling us Shamrock has the very same personality traits as his father and is going to be a menace for the rest of the story. Now, Shamrock does seem to be going back to the Holy Land to deal with everything that happened at the Reverie, but I do think he could potentially make another appearance at Elbaf. If not this arc, he will definitely be an important character in the final war. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, and if you want to stick around as we follow Shamrock through the rest of the story to find out what kind of relationship he's going to have with Shanks as the story moves to its end, why not subscribe? I upload every week, theories, analysis, just talking about One Piece. We're really in the golden age of the manga, and soon to be the anime, and I'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching, and until next time.